Darktide finally puts some of the most iconic 40k weapons in the hands of players. The game is visceral, it's chaotic, and the action is almost non-stop, which is why you need the right weapon for the right job. Hey there friends, it's Kodiak here, welcome to Legacy Gaming. Today, I'm sharing 5 guns worth checking out before you dive into the dregs of Tertium. Today's video isn't about min-maxing. In fact, in the game's current state, that's really the furthest thing from my mind. What I aim to do is present you all with 5 really cool guns worth checking out. They may not be the best or the most optimized, but they're damn fun to use and will provide you with hours of entertainment. I included at least 1 gun from each class on this list, and also included my current favorite weapon in the game based on my 80 hours of playtime throughout the closed beta, pre-launch beta, and now launch. So without further delay, let's dive in. We can't make a video like this without starting with the Boltgun. It's one of the most iconic weapons in the 40k universe, and although Fat Shark had to bend the lore to allow us peasants to wield such an incredible weapon, I'm glad they did, because this thing is a ton of fun to shoot. When fired from the hip, the gun shoots off 2 rounds, making it a great option when enemies get close and you need to create a little breathing room. When you aim down the sight and pull the trigger, you fire off 1 round at a time. The gun also features a simple bash as its special action. What's really key about the Boltgun is its high damage. It's a powerful weapon capable of cleaving pretty much any enemy in half. It's basically an RPG condensed into bullet form, but you get the same bang for your buck. The weapon has a very unique action. Like most guns in Darktide, you're stuck with a simple iron sight, and every time you pull the trigger, you absorb an enormous amount of recoil, which really messes with your shooting at first. Over time, you get really accustomed to the way this gun operates, and the higher stability you find on the weapon, the easier that action is to manage. The Boltgun rewards accuracy, and if you have some skill, you can easily take out targets across encounter areas with little to no issue. In fact, it's pretty common for me to kill an elite or 2 before my team even has a chance to engage them, because I'm able to pick them off with the Boltgun. The weapon does have some serious drawbacks, and I think it's only fair we highlight them. The max ammo capacity is paltry compared to some of the other ranged weapons in the game. If you use the Boltgun to kill every dreg that ambles towards you, you'll run out of ammo. It's that simple. The weapon also has a ridiculously slow reload speed, north of 6 seconds, and when you only have 15 rounds to play with each magazine, you've got to make every shot count. To fully embrace the Boltgun, you need to know when to use the Boltgun. Like I said, if you shoot everything that moves, you're just wasting the weapon's potential, but if you focus on special and elite enemies, you're gonna find that the gun gets the job done 9 times out of 10. Add on the fact that the weapon has a solid piercing effect, and you can line up some pretty sweet shots, cutting through multiple enemies with just a few pulls of the trigger. The Locke Spearhead Boltgun unlocks for veteran sharpshooters at level 14 and zealot preachers at level 12. If there's one weapon on this list that's completely changed Darktide for me, it's the Accatran Recon Lasgun. This thing is absolutely incredible, boasting an insane rate of fire and high magazine capacity, making it the perfect weapon for this game. It's simple really. The faster I can fire, the more ammo I have to expend, the more enemies I can kill in this horde-style game. It's a straightforward gun with a standard hipfire attack, your traditional ADS with iron sights, and for its special attack you get the ever-important flashlight. What I really enjoy about the Recon Lasgun is its ability to be effective from the hip and when you aim down the sights. This thing is a laser, quite literally. It has one of the lowest recoils of any gun in the game, which means keeping it on target is really simple. If you're looking for a point-and-shoot solution, this is the weapon. The gun is technically available for the Psyker, Veteran, and Zealot, but there are nuances to that considering there are 3 variations of the weapon in the game. The key, as is the case with every gun, is to find one that's got the highest possible damage modifier, but that matters a lot more here because of the higher rate of fire. The better that modifier, the higher your DPS potential is, making this gun that much more potent when it matters most, against some of the biggest and toughest enemies in the game. In most scenarios, the Recon Lasgun can be the difference maker in serious firefights. It's tailor-made for dealing with large hordes of enemies, cutting them down in the same way a machine gun would, but it's also incredibly potent when fire is focused on a priority target. In many cases, it can single-handedly bring down a Rager or Mauler, but on the flip side, still has the accuracy to shoot across the map and take down a sniper. It's uniquely positioned as one of the best all-around weapons, and it's hard to find a real drawback. Its damage is amongst the lowest per round in the game, but it hardly matters as the massive magazine size coupled with fire rate and solid accuracy more than make up the difference. If your style is run and gun and you don't want to mess around with too many weird weapon quirks, the Accatran Recon Lasgun is the gun for you. There are 3 variations, as I mentioned before, and each is available for different classes. The Mark II can be acquired by the Veteran, Zealot, and Psyker. The Mark 6D can be obtained by the Veteran and Psyker, and the Mark 7A can be obtained by the Veteran. While not technically a gun, I thought it was only fair to include a Psyker weapon on our list. 1, I'm a Psyker main, so I had to include something, and 2, the weapon is so crazy fun to use that I would be doing you all a disservice if I didn't include it. What I'm talking about is the Rifthaven Purgatus Force Staff, and I have a complicated relationship with this weapon. When I first was testing it out, I absolutely hated it. I thought it was garbage, didn't understand how it fit into a team comp, but then I really spent some time to understand the nuances of the weapon, and after a few short runs, I was hooked. To really appreciate this weapon, we have to understand its 2 different actions. The primary action shoots out what I can only describe as a blast of warp energy. This is a short-range attack, but it's actually got substantially more throw than you might expect. What I love about the attack is that it's an instant cast, doesn't cost a lot of peril, and has a bit of a stagger component to it, and because it covers a pretty wide cone in front of the player, that's a huge difference maker when you're using the weapon to support your team. You can use it to stagger hordes, elite enemies, pretty much anything and everything heading your way, with 1 or 2 exceptions for the largest enemies. The secondary action is a channel jet of warp energy. Think Flamethrower Psyker Edition. This is really where the damage comes from. You get all the same great aspects of the primary action, but now a constant stream of damage that you can channel for a few seconds. As a Psyker, what's important is managing your peril, and I found that this weapon makes it relatively easy. The cost for each primary attack is low and consistent, which means it's easy to gauge when you might need to quell. And your secondary action, while cost-intensive, builds peril consistently, again, easy to manage. Depending on the feats you take, you can amp up the damage considerably on the weapon, but that's a topic for another video. The weapon does also have a special action, which is a bash attack, but in all honesty, I just switch to my melee weapon if something slips through the cracks, which honestly doesn't happen often. To really make the most out of the Rifthaven Purgatus Force Staff, you have to embrace a certain playstyle. If you usually play a supporting role in team games, then you will absolutely love how this weapon fits into a group composition. My main goal is to provide as much consistent damage to as many enemies as possible. Because there is a dot effect tied to the weapon, you can really maximize overall damage by blanketing the field with attacks. My secondary objective is to identify and negate any oncoming attacks from special enemies. That means Ragers, Maulers, Hounds, Poxbursters, anything that is heading our way, I'm trying to stagger them to give my team room to adjust. Of course, you can't forget about popping heads, and that's still a mighty powerful aspect of the Psyker's kit, used when you need to take out those big priority targets like Bulwarks and Crushers. You also have the flexibility to snap into damage mode and channel up a big secondary attack using that stream of warp energy to deal some impressive damage. Now, the real truth is that you will never be the star with this weapon. You absolutely won't have the most kills, but I guarantee once we get the scoreboard at the end of the round, you'll see that with good execution, this weapon is capable of dealing an insane amount of damage, and the utility it brings to the team is invaluable. Like me, you may hate it at first, but I promise, give it a try, build around it, and you'll have a blast using this weapon. There's little doubt that the Ogryn Skullbreaker belongs on the front line of any battle, but sometimes switching to range and unleashing a hail of lead can make just as big an impact. When that's the case, we think it's worth busting out the Krourk twin-linked heavy stub. This thing is a beast, featuring impressive magazine capacity and consistent high damage that can help an Ogryn control the battlefield. Its primary action allows you to shoot the weapon from the hip, and the secondary action allows you to brace the weapon, giving you a little more control over the recoil and action. The gun does have a special action, which is a simple bash, but as with most guns, it's best to just whip out your melee weapon if enemies get too close. There are some drawbacks to talk about, mainly the weapon's egregiously long reload time. I haven't checked every weapon in the game, but I'd bet money that the reload time on this weapon is currently the longest in Darktide, and that's definitely something to factor in. That being said, you do have more than 100 rounds of ammunition to utilize before needing to reload, so it's a bit of a trade-off. The weapon also doesn't have pinpoint accuracy, but that's really not why you use this weapon. If you wanted to snipe something across the map, you'd play a sharpshooter. That's just not a scenario the heavy stub is suited for. That being said, there's plenty that the weapon does incredibly well. As is pretty clear in the gameplay footage, the heavy stub is about suppression and the ability to keep enemies at bay while systematically dismantling them with decent damage per round. There's nothing more satisfying than mowing down an entire horde without ever needing to reload, and it's an experience that you can pretty much only have with this gun. Because the heavy stub has the ability to stagger enemies, it's also effective when used in close proximity to those enemies. You don't need to be in the back line to fire the heavy stub, and because you're playing an Ogryn, it's almost better that you stay in the thick of the action. The weapon is just as effective up close and, in fact, becomes much less effective the further away from the action that you get. As long as you stay in the realm of close to mid-range, I think most Ogryns will find the heavy stub a fun weapon to use. The Krourk twin-linked heavy stub unlocks for all Ogryns at level 9. Rounding out our video, I want to bring it back to a classic, the Kantrael Infantry Lasgun. Chances are you've used this weapon in the early parts of your leveling experience, but I bet you haven't returned to it since you've unlocked a few feats and other guns to put a dozen or so runs under your belt. I want to put this weapon back into the spotlight, not just because it's such a staple of the 40k universe, but because it's a damn good weapon when you consider just how versatile it is. Its primary action is a semi-automatic hipfire attack, and its secondary action allows you to aim down the sight utilizing a red dot style scope. The gun's special action is a flashlight. To be honest, you've probably stopped caring about this weapon because your introduction to it was the least powerful variation, the MG-1A. But the more powerful MG-4 and MG-12 really elevate this gun, making it an all-around pick for many in the game. The Infantry Lasgun isn't going to win any awards for its dominance in any one particular scenario, but where it does shine is its consistency in every scenario. The gun is capable of thinning out herds of an enemy horde. It's also perfectly fine at delivering highly accurate shots across the map to knock out a sniper or bomber. It's also perfectly adept at adding damage to the mix when confronting an armored enemy or even a monstrosity. Where some weapons are highly situational, the Infantry Lasgun is just applicable across the board. You don't feel bad about using it to kill a few dregs because its magazine capacity is so good, but it's also perfectly adept at handling those high-pressure situations where your team is on the brink of collapse. Where I will say the gun has some drawbacks is with its rate of fire and slightly unwieldy recoil. I wish the gun was just a bit faster and a bit more stable, but if we're being honest, the devs did a good job making the gun as canonically accurate as we've seen in a 40k game. Again, the point of this video is to talk about guns that we think are fun to use, and while the Infantry Lasgun might not be the best, it certainly makes you feel like you're playing a 40k game, and when you land a few well-placed headshots, that rush of euphoria is all too sweet. If you haven't picked up an Infantry Lasgun in a minute, I urge you to keep an eye out for the MG4 or MG12 and give it another go. Of course, look for one with the best stats that you can find that's only going to elevate the experience, but regardless, I think you'll be surprised just how effective the gun really is. The Kantrael Infantry Lasgun is available for the Veteran Sharpshooter, Zealot Preacher, and Psyker Psychonetic. And there you have it, 5 ranged weapons we think are worth using in Warhammer 40k Darktide. What do you guys think of our list? Let us know in the comments, and feel free to share the weapon you've had the most fun with. As always, if you enjoy our videos and want to support the channel, feel free to hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. It really does help out. You can also join us on Discord. We just reworked our entire server, so if you're looking to talk about the latest games or just want to be part of an awesome community, check out the link in the description below. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.